All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel. King's right here came at me and said that there's a ship coin that he wants to focus on instead of Bitcoin. The initial comment was right here. The only money worth having is redacted. I've redacted the coin because we don't need to know what it is. We don't need to give it any credit or credibility whatsoever. When asked to justify why this coin was allegedly better than Bitcoin, this was the response. So we're going to go through this response and see if there's any merit to any of this argument at all. So he says, I'm focusing on what matters, which is apparently not Bitcoin, instead of some house of cards that is buggy as hell and falling apart and built in a way that won't survive the future. So this all pertains to Bitcoin. I'm not sure exactly how a house of cards pertains to Bitcoin. I think that's the fiat currency system. Buggy as hell and falling apart. Bitcoin has been successfully operating for 99.988 etc. % of its time. It has only 2 downtime events, one for 8 hours and one for 6 hours. They were both over 10 years ago, as you can see. So I don't know about buggy as hell and falling apart. I think that's your argument. He then went on to say that I just blindly follow the flock of sheep right off the cliff. So do you notice whenever there's an argument against Bitcoin, it's typically filled with these sort of cheap insults. Instead of actually making a case against Bitcoin, people just like to throw these things around here. So I don't know about following a flock of sheep right off the cliff. Bitcoin is the most thermodynamically sound asset on the planet, right? And you can see if I draw your eye to this hard right edge here, you can see cumulative performance. Bitcoin is the best performing. So is annualized performance. Bitcoin is the best performing. If you look down the bottom left hand screen, highest return versus lowest return, Bitcoin is in the highest return every time, apart from the times when it is in a bear market. And here on the left hand side is all of the assets that it absolutely smokes every single time. Bitcoin is the apex predator asset. I don't know about following sheep right off of a cliff. It seems like I'm moving in the direction of the best performing asset that the world has ever seen. He then goes on to say that Blockstream has ruined it. Now, I don't really know how a company that is responsible for putting a node in space using a satellite so that Bitcoin can even continue to tick along and wait for the internet to reboot, assuming the internet goes down on planet Earth. I don't know how that constitutes as ruining it. Of course, there's no further argument or discussion here, just a simple statement. Ordinals have ruined it. Look, I don't like ordinals either, to be honest. And there was a brief moment in time when people started to bombard the chain and it drove up the transaction fees and it did temporarily congest the network. I will give you that. But let's be honest, right? Just because you don't like something doesn't mean that it shouldn't be able to happen. The point of Bitcoin is people are free to build whatever they want on top of the blockchain, and that includes ordinals, right? If people want to make their own NFTs and use Bitcoin for that, they can do that. Of course, it doesn't really work in the real world as an NFT should. The whole point of an NFT is it is non-fungible, right? But with ordinals, it doesn't even work as a truly non-fungible asset because the way the Bitcoin architecture is built means that you can't actually tell exactly which sats were used for the ordinal. So it's not even truly non-fungible. If people want to put ordinals on the blockchain, they have the absolute right to do that. And all it really does is generate more revenue for miners. Bitcoin actually welcomes any kind of attack or exploit. Bitcoin is a self-healing, self-repairing network. When people put the Taproot and TapScript upgrades on the Bitcoin protocol, ordinals are essentially an unforeseen exploit of the Taproot system. Whenever there's a potential exploit, someone is always going to be in a rush to show up and exploit it and say, ha, look how smart I am. I found an exploit in Bitcoin. But like I said, this is the whole point of a blockchain. This is the whole point of Bitcoin. Bitcoin welcomes these attacks because any attacks are quickly patched, are quickly resolved, and attacks only function to make Bitcoin stronger. Ordinals did not ruin Bitcoin. Ordinals are just simply something that can occur, an unforeseen set of circumstances, and now we're likely going to be here. If you don't like ordinals, you can run the Ord Disrespector patch, and that's it. Ordinals are no longer a thing in your Bitcoin world. He then goes on to say, you can barely even use the chain anymore with the congestion and bloat. Again, this is simply false, okay? It's just simply false. Here is the current network congestion time. You can see we're averaging slightly more than 10 minutes a block, and this is likely because of the huge parabolic surge we've seen in hash rate. Once the difficulty adjustment is made, then this will start to come back into normal territory. And frankly, we are right around that normal 10-minute block time on average, okay? 10 minutes is an average block time. It's not a mandate that we have to hit it exactly every 10 minutes. So what congestion and bloat are you talking about? Not to mention, we can of course use Lightning to settle instantly. Remember, Lightning is faster and cheaper than Visa. Using the Lightning network costs 0.00029% versus the 3% standard charge for a Visa or MasterCard transaction. The current median fee rate is, as you can see, free. It's free to use Lightning, okay? And just in case you're not convinced, here is Bitcoin on the left versus Visa on the right. As you can see, it's quicker than Visa, okay? It's quicker than Visa. So again, I'm not really sure what congestion and bloat you're talking about. He then goes on to say, miners are talking about increasing the total coins to removing the 21 million hard cap. Yeah, they may well be talking about that, but you cannot change the code of Bitcoin. What we could do is fork the chain. We could create a fork of the chain and people could choose to accept or reject that fork. We've seen this with Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Gold. There's been plenty of forks over the years. But I ask you the rhetorical question, how well have those forks done? Okay? And how well do you really think a fork that removes the hard cap supply of Bitcoin will do? Everybody knows the answer. Nobody is going to choose to have one of the best features of Bitcoin in that it has a hard cap supply. Nobody is going to choose a fork where it doesn't have a hard cap supply. So they can talk about this all they like. Some of them may even leave the network and go to move and mine a coin, a variant, a fork of Bitcoin, which does not have a hard cap. But that's not going to change the fact that the people have spoken and the people want a hard cap, and that is going to continue to be the case. He then goes on to say, this is why miners should never have a say because it's not in the best interest of coin holders. It's complete junk. The world just hasn't caught on yet. I think it's you that hasn't caught on yet, okay? The miners need value in the network. They need adoption of the network. They need a certain floor price of Bitcoin in order to break even on their mining investment. They put huge amounts of investment of capital expenditure into running mines. They have huge overheads in the form of electricity costs, maintenance, cooling. Miners have a vested interest in a higher Bitcoin price because the higher the Bitcoin price, the higher their profit margins. Finally, we move on to this point. You know, in all of these proof of work coins, especially Bitcoin, people often point to the incredible hash power. Yes, we do, because Bitcoin is the only secure database on the planet, okay? It is more powerful than the largest 50 supercomputers combined by orders of magnitude. But what good is that when the majority of nodes are owned by the few? So I think what you're trying to say here is the majority of miners are concentrated in mining pools and therefore controlled by the few, because the majority of nodes are not owned by a few. They're very, very distributed. And you can see that just using a Bitcoin node map. If you are talking about mining pools, and this is what constitutes your argument for this being centralized trash, people often make this mistake about mining pool distribution. They look at this chart right here and they say, well, look, 29% of miners are part of the Foundry USA pool, and 21% are part of AMP pool, and 15% are part of F2 pool. So therefore, mining must be centralized, right? Mining must be concentrated. Mining must be controlled by these three largest mining pools. But remember, a lot of times, miners will buy mining rigs and pool them because that makes their miners more profitable. It does not mean the mining is concentrated. The owner of these mining pools cannot manipulate the minds of individual people that connect their minds to a pool to engage in foul play. Think about it like this. Say you bought a miner, right? Are you going to go at it solo? Probably not. Are you going to use a pool? Yes, probably. So let's assume you connect your miner to a mining pool. If you suspect foul play, there's no contract. There's nothing that the mining pool can do to your miner because it sits not even on site for the mining pool. Your mining pool will be plugged in at your house and you'll just be using this pool. If you suspect foul play, you'll just switch pools the same day. And that pool will lose all credibility for engaging in foul play. The network will reroute around that pool and that pool will no longer be engaging in mining Bitcoin. So if this is what you mean by centralization, again, you need to go and study Bitcoin a little bit harder. He then goes on to say that this redacted ship coin of his is the only proof of work coin that has very little hash power. No, it isn't. They all have very little hash power because only Bitcoin is focused on by miners. Only Bitcoin has a credible amount of hash power. There are plenty of proof of work coins out there that are highly vulnerable. And let me tell you, I looked into your redacted ship coin, and believe me, it's highly vulnerable. It would take, by my rough calculations, less than 1% of the Bitcoin network to completely destroy it if it was to decide to stop mining Bitcoin and start to redirect its proof of work power at your ship coin. But anyway, he says his proof of work coin is the only one with very little hash power, and yet is more secure than Bitcoin. This is simply a false statement, okay? Bitcoin is the only secure database on the planet. You can't just lie in your argument and expect this to fly, okay? If it was more secure than Bitcoin, why wouldn't more people use it? Okay, why has nobody even heard of your redacted ship coin? This is such a lie. This is a joke. You can't come in here and use lies to try to further your argument. He then goes on to say, because of leverage, it leverages proof of stake as well to govern it by coin holders so that no block can be manipulated. Yet Bitcoin has blocks manipulated all day long. It's a wonder it's still alive. Again, what are we talking about here? What are we talking? Bitcoin does not have blocks manipulated all day long. If it did, it wouldn't still be here. You clearly do not understand what an immutable ledger is. There is no way to manipulate the blocks. The only way you could manipulate the blocks would require a covert chip manufacturing operation that went undetected and cost billions of dollars. You would then somehow need to acquire the amount of electricity used to power over 51% of the total hash rate of Bitcoin. Once you've done that, you would in theory be able to attack and manipulate blocks, and you would probably be able to assert block dominance for no more than 10 minutes before the rest of the network detected your foul play, rerouted the network around you, and you were kicked off permanently. Okay, you would have spent billions of dollars manufacturing chips and wasted electricity trying to gain block dominance for 10 minutes, only for it all to be completely wasted. If you're going to do all of that, you are incentivized to just mine honestly, and this is some of the genius that exists within the Bitcoin network. It's not a wonder it's still alive to people that understand it. It's a wonder to you, perhaps, because you are simply uneducated on this subject matter. Going back to this whole proof of stake and proof of work, what are we even talking about here? Okay, proof of stake is completely trash. And we've seen this in Ethereum. Do you remember when Ethereum went to proof of stake and suddenly 50% of its blocks are OFAC compliant? Remember, OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, is a department of the US Treasury. OFAC.treasury.gov. Is this really what you want from a proof of stake system? We already have fiat currency. We do not need proof of stake. The idea that proof of stake is more censorship resistant than Bitcoin is a joke. The idea that it's more secure is a joke. The idea that it could be more inclusive than proof of work is also a joke. So I'm afraid there's absolutely zero merit to your argument. This is going to conclude me trolling the trolls. This channel is a place for serious individuals. This is not a place for altcoins. This is not a place for trying to find the next Bitcoin. This is not a place for DeFi, Web3, meme coins, none of that. All of that exists across thousands of channels across YouTube. You do not need this channel for any of that. There are plenty of people out there that would love to shill you the next 100x or 1000x altcoin. This channel is a place for serious individuals. This is for serious individuals that want a better future, one filled with hope, freedom, and self-sovereignty, unconfiscatable, bearer assets that carry no counterparty risk. This is a channel for serious individuals, serious traders that want a better future for our children and for our grandchildren. Okay, this is not a joke. This is not a game. There are 2 million coins left to be mined between now and the year 2140. There are 2 million left on exchanges. Okay, this is not a game. There's no time left. You need to acquire as much of this as you can before the 65 million millionaires worldwide all figure out they want to own at least one Bitcoin, okay? There's not enough left. There's not enough time left. And the future is looking bleaker and bleaker by the day as we get closer and closer to CBDCs. Exit the system. Stop messing around trying to find 100x or 1000x pumps and look at your damn portfolio performance. That will tell you if you know what you're talking about, okay? Let's go back to this one last time. Bitcoin is the apex predator of assets. Just be humble. DCA into Bitcoin, sit back, accumulate what you can before the herd arrives.